Hello, everybody. It's getting close. It's right around the corner. The big ho man is coming. I hope you guys are getting ready. They say the second busiest shopping day of the year is the weekend before Christmas. So hopefully you're out there getting those last minute packages together. I want to share a story with you, and I want to ask your opinion while we're waiting for everybody to come in. We do have a guest this week. We're going to be talking about the housing market and what's going to be happening in 2023 and our expectations and our predictions. But first, I want to ask you this. So I saw a couple the guy decides that he's going to buy his wife a house for Christmas. And he's like so hyped, man. He is so hyped. He's going to buy a house for his wife for Christmas. He finds this house. He buys the house in his name. And so he opened the door for him and her and the kids. And so he says to them, they're going to an open house. So this is the first time the wife's seen the house. She gets out of that car and she's like, I really don't like the color. And he's like, oh, well, it's just painting to be changed. She's like, oh, okay. And then she walks in, she goes, oh, this smells like dogs in this house. And he's like, you can just see. And then she's like, oh, this would have been great, if it was just around the corner. I don't think the schools are good here. And so you can just see, you can hear the change in his voice. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's like, I bought this house. This is our house for Christmas. The kids are super excited. And the wife's like, oh, great. Great. You can just tell on her face that she's like, you already signed the papers and everything. He's like, yeah, it's all been inspected. Everything's done, and she was like, thank you. You could just tell she wanted to cry. So I have to ask you, would you be mad if your significant other bought you a house for Christmas without consulting you? I have to know. Would you be okay with this? Because me personally, I'd be hot mad. I have to have some input in there. Speaking about being hot mad about the real estate market, let's talk to Matt Kelderman. You guys, your favorite real estate agent out of the Dallas-Fort Worth housing market. There he is. Matt Kelderman, take yourself off mute. There you are.
Hello. I know I had to cough so much while you were talking about that story. Hello, everybody. Here's what I feel like. You should be so sure that you know what the house that your spouse wants to get. I feel like this is the same person who does the huge public proposal and then they say no. It's like, how are you not so sure they were going to say yes before you did that? Like, you better really, really know the house before you buy one without talking to anybody else.
I feel like the public proposal thing is they know they're going to say no, and they're hoping that the public pressure would make them say yes.
Make them say yes? That's a good twist on that idea. Or they're doing it for likes somewhere for bits. I don't know.
I've turned down a proposal. I did. That's not a lie.
I would actually probably be happy if Victoria went out and bought the house because it would remove me from having to do it. And I truly don't care. I don't care. If I could turn the camera around, you realize if she wasn't here, this whole house would just be an empty shell of itself anyways. So I just go do your thing.
Yeah, somebody said they'd be hot mad. Somebody said if they didn't include me on the decision, I'd be mad. And then Shari says, yes, it's equal decision. Yeah, it's equal decision.
Yeah, that's a rough one. I probably wouldn't do that.
It's a financial decision let's just forget about the fact the way it looks, right? Yeah. This is a big financial decision. Most of the time it's the biggest financial decision of a family. So I'd be so mad. Yes, and the fact that he put it in just as his name. That's what I said. That's what I was like, oh my God. She never even signed the papers on it.
That wouldn't matter in Texas. That'd be half her house regardless of whether if they're married.
Well, it wouldn't matter here in Louisiana because property actually goes to the kids. The will has to state that it goes to the spouse, because then it would just automatically go to the children, not to the spouse.
That makes sense.
So,
wow.
Oh, I would be so grateful. Such a sweet husband. I wasn't feeling the sweetness. Me personally, my wife is mad when I book the wrong Airbnb. So yeah. No, I would not be okay at all. See? Okay. Well, I'm glad we were all on the same page, because it was like the comment section of this video was about half and half. Half were like, oh, I'd be so grateful. I'd be so grateful that, I didn't have to go through the headache of going to look for a house, and he got it all done for me right before the holidays. And then the other half was like, "Are you kidding me? These schools are terrible." She even said that.
It's funny because the schools part actually would probably be the one part of that that would make it really kind of upsetting. The rest of the stuff you could figure out. You can clean out the dog smell. You do that stuff. The schools, your kid's got to go to schools that she's not happy about now.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Yeah.
kids gotta switch schools. That's exactly right. In the middle of the school year.
It is
Oh,
such it is sometimes such a dad thing not to do though, because I will tell you, we're currently shopping for a house, and it's kind of ties into what we're talking about today. It's pretty hard to find because we're trying to stay in one school district, and I'm like, "There's nothing here. Can we just move the kids again?" She's like,
yeah.
"No."
No, no, you can't. No. I moved many times during my school years.
Yeah,
I've been in, like, 7 different schools throughout, like, elementary,
yeah.
middle, high school, and I was always thankful because I was always bullied every time I was in school.
So
So,
you were like, "Move on to the
every
next
time we
one."
moved, I'm like, "Good, I can start over again." This is a true story, and we're gonna get in the real estate market in just a second, but I have to share this. I had the biggest bully in middle school when I lived in Texas, and, like, it was so bad that she had a group of girls that had, like, physically, attacked me, and they got in trouble, and then my dad comes home from work and says, "We're moving again, and we're moving to Atlanta, Georgia," and I was so thankful, like, to get away from this group of bullies that had really made my life miserable. And I walk into my homeroom class, and the girl who bullied me says, "Kristina?" And I turn around, my face was as pale as snow, and there she is sitting in the front row. Of all the places in the universe
Oh
that
my.
this girl had to move to the same city, the same school. Her dad doesn't even work for the same company as my I'm like, either God is punishing me for something or this is just such a weird
Do you
coincidence.
have like the normal real estate agent story where 20 years later you sold her a house or something?
No, 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 and I was like, "Ugh," it was
Well,
one of
on
those
behalf of the state
things.
of Texas, I apologize for her and her friends.
Yeah, well, what's so weird is like they never remember, those the school bullies, they never remember, you know?
No,
Never remember. So, anyways, let's get into real estate.
let's
Let's
do
get
it.
into real estate. We got a first article here, and it was, and you can pull either one of those 2 I had up because we were talking about that. Oh, and don't forget, everybody, next week is a pre-recorded show. So I put a link at the top there about the questions. So it's just you're going to go ahead and fill out that form for the real estate questions. And then Eddie and I are going to record a live stream. And then that way it's going to be posted, and I wanted to ask you guys, do you want it on Christmas Day or do you want it on Christmas Eve? You let me know in the chat so that way I can flush it out. Okay. Why the Fed is taking a sledgehammer to the housing market. As the central bank continues aggressively raising interest rates, it's been a battle to get inflation under control, and the housing market is collateral damage. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think you and I have talked about this a couple of times. I think part of what is swinging this car down the road so much is that, Fed Chair Jerome Powell does, after he gets done talking, he kind of keeps talking. And you can almost watch the markets kind of moving minute by minute if you're the type of person who watches that, kind of with his sentiment. And he has been very super middle of the ground in his responses. And I think that's what's causing some of this is that he doesn't seem too sure of kind of where the car is going.
That's what I've been saying.
Yes.
I had, a mortgage guy on here, Ryan LaRusso with GMFS, and he was saying, though, because they keep increasing, the rate, that it's going to affect interest rates in a positive way, and we've started to already see that with,
Yes.
it hit the peak at just over 7%, and now it's slightly trickling back. There was another rate increase just recently, and he believes from all of his little circles that we're going to be seeing numbers in the fives again. My fear with this is that if we see numbers in the fives again, and then people are willing to do you know, the, um, the buy downs from sellers, that we could see that pent up demand, especially for people in that first time home buying situation again. And we're never going to see the home prices come down like we want them to. That's what I'm worried about. Okay, so let's see. After the Fed raised its benchmark on Wednesday for the seventh time this year, it's likely that the dynamic will only get worse. For every percentage point increase in mortgage rates, the number of households who can afford a $400,000 mortgage declines by 3 to 4 million, according to Freddie Mac and the federally sponsored enterprise that promotes home lending. Freddie Mac estimates that the 15 million potential buyers have been priced out of the housing market this year for the first time in U.S. history. And the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage has more than doubled in the year's time from 3% to 6%. But here's the thing, even if it was to go to 5% or 4% or 3%, home prices in that what we would consider first time home buyers are super high, super high. And the competition on it is so high. As
We
mortgage rates are rising faster, then the houses are dropping. Americans who still do oh my God, Americans who do still buy new homes will dig deeper in their wallets, adding to the financial stress of high inflation, and more financial pressure may be in the pipeline for growing numbers of buyers who are now opting for adjustable rate mortgages. Have you seen that they're making that more available too? Easier to finance? That makes me
Yes, and
nervous.
I've always said on here that just I love temporary rate buy downs, like the 2-1 buy down, like for the right
Yeah, the
buyers. If it's
2-1 buy down
adjustable
is
rate mortgage,
fine.
I stay super far away if you're looking for this real estate agent's advice. For
And
most
tell
people, they
everybody what
don't
a
make
2-1
sense.
buy down is.
So a 2-1 buy down is essentially where, like, let's use your example of 6% interest rates, right? Like, which this works a little bit better now that we have the 6% interest rates, but you're essentially buying your rate down for the next 2 years. So in year one, you would pay the interest total, right? For year
Mhm.
one and year two, and you'd buy that rate down in year one to a 4%, and then in year two would be a 5%. At the beginning of year three, it would roll back up to the 6%. Now, you're being pre-qualified off the fact that you can afford the 6% rate, even though you're getting the 4% rate. And
Right.
yes, you are bringing more cash to closing, but we're finding that sellers were able to negotiate that in the contract and seller concessions for the most part. So it's kind of keeping the buyer's costs down. And the hope is that if interest rates go above 6, you're sitting at 6 and it's looking attractive. If they go above 6 or below 6 and stay there, you can refinance. It's not a perfect product for everybody. And the good thing is also is this money that you used to buy the rate down, it stays in escrow. So when you refinance, it's just applied to the principal of the loan. So for a buyer, if you can get the seller to buy it down, there's really no big, huge potential risk to you if it's the seller's money sitting in escrow and then applied to the principal later, right? It's a way
Mhm.
for somebody who needs to buy now and the interest rates freak them out to kind of get in the game. And you can still get stuff with a four. Hell, some sellers are builders are offering 4.99% interest rates right now.
I got I wish I think I did screenshot. I got one from a big builder,
They're
the
all
one
over
that
here
has
in DFW if
the
you're
one that
in
has
here.
the medical professional name.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
And they were offering, 10,000 in closing
Mhm.
costs. They were giving 8% commissions to real estate buyers agents.
Oh, they're saying that in the appointments
8%.
too, in front of the buyers. And like I said, if you're in DFW, our new construction opportunities are huge right now. You can get a
Right.
solid interest rate if you know you're going with the builder's lender, but there's not inherently a ton of risk in that with the good builders, right? Like you can get a pretty solid interest rate, still negotiate in money in the design center, and if you spend that wisely, it can increase your value. There's a lot of things to do right now on the new build construction here locally. That's I know everybody doesn't have the same new construction stuff we have here, but it's a little pressure release here in DFW.
I've been telling everybody, if you're planning on getting new construction, for as much as those builders raked buyers through the coals for 2 years, you do the same thing.
Oh, go get
You
it.
literally suck everything out of them because they deserve it.
We,
They
I can
deserve
sit here and tell you a story of a new construction we just put under contract, but we got the lot premium down by 50%, right?
Uh-huh.
We've got, they got like 40,000 extra dollars credit in the design center. We got them to include some features that weren't typically normal. You know, like if they do a bump out in the master bedroom with bay windows, that's usually 5 grand. We got about 3 of those things added in there. And they threw in like $9,000 sliding glass doors on top of that. So some of that might have been baked in their price, but to the buyer, it feels like a huge win. They got a lot of upgrades and their interest rate's solid, you know, and they're getting the house they want. So
Yeah, Vartakis? I hope I said that right. For Vatakis? Question: what are the requirements on buying a bank-owned home? Do they have to be cash purchase or can it be financed? Now that's gonna depend on which bank you're dealing with. So, with there's all sorts of different types of foreclosures here in our area. Now, if you're dealing with something called a HUD foreclosure, you can use any kind of financing under the sun. As a matter of fact, I always talk about HUDhomestore.org. You can go on there and you can bid for a house, and you will not be in competition for the first 14 days. I think they've actually extended that to 30 days now for a person that's buying, an individual that's buying their house for themselves and not an investor. So you don't have to worry about those. They like working with those owner occupant buyers first before they ever want to work with a institutional investor or any kind of investor for that matter. So yeah, and you can use anything. Now, other foreclosure sites will say cash only. They'll literally list it cash only. But every one that I've ever seen that's been a cash only sale foreclosure is usually the house is like barely holding up. I mean, it's like, kind of like this. It's the house is pretty much a tear down. And what you're doing is you're buying the house as you're buying the piece of land with the house, knowing that you're going to have to tear it down, but you're using it because of the utilities and the improvements that are already done on that piece of land, and you're getting a deal.
Yeah, I echo the same thing. HUD Home Store is the only one I have a lot of experience with, and I think it's probably the easiest one for the general buyer. If you're going to buy for yourself, to start there, and then there's a whole lot of other ones too, of course, locally.
There's some good ones out there. And, if you're looking for a good foreclosure website in my description of these videos, you can go to foreclosure.com, and there's actually even a discount there, but they have the best foreclosures that you can find. Those are the ones that may not even be on the MLS. And then they'll take you to those auction websites that you can, sign up for, and it'll walk you through the whole process. Now, if you want to have representation of a real estate agent for those specific listings, and it's not in the MLS, you can contact a local real estate agent that is proficient in foreclosures. And I will strongly suggest that you work with somebody that knows what they're doing when it comes to foreclosures, because it is a lot more work. There is a lot more paperwork, and you have to keep your eye on the time. You got to keep your eye on the time, because sometimes they'll say, all right, we're going to open up bidding right now. So you have to be there. But yeah, there it is, HUDhomestore.gov. Yeah, there it is. You go right there. And you can just put in any city, town, anywhere, and it will come up with stuff. Oh, Eddie's going to hit on Texas. Let's see what comes up. Oh, all my exes live in Texas. So is that right there, Matt?
Yeah, there gonna be a few of them in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that a lot of people were talking about foreclosures and that they are seeing a lot more foreclosures. I want people to understand that some foreclosures are behind. Like, these foreclosures should have been on the market 2 years ago, but because of the pandemic and government closures and all this other stuff, courts being closed, it took a long time for a lot of them to hit the market. There's not a significant wave of foreclosures at this time that is hitting the market anywhere except for New Jersey. But New Jersey has always had the highest rate of foreclosures in the United States. I think it's because it's easier for the banks to foreclose in that area. That's the only thing I can come up with. I'm not sure why New Jersey always has a higher rate. But you're going to see a lot more coming out in New Jersey, if that's where you happen to live, because the ones that were tied up in court for all this time they're going to be hitting the market soon. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out there.
I kind of think the same thing, and this kind of ties back into the question about interest rates. I think one of the things that we're going to have to see before this financial crisis starts to come to an end, this is the least popular thing people want to hear, is unemployment has to go up.
That's
right?
What I said.
And the problem with this is that's when you're going to see the foreclosures, right? There are going to be, we're already seeing it here locally in Plano. They just, Pepsi, I think, just laid off like 500 executives. These aren't even just like the people that were thinking just bought the $200 or $300. These are people with expensive houses that maybe overpaid in this market by $125,000 to get the house to go above appraised value. I'm not saying, and when we talk about like where people are going to get jammed up in this, I think that's the space. One of the articles you sent, there was an example the gentleman used in there about home prices going down so much in 5 months. The people who bought 6 months ago, if they lose their job in this wave of somewhat of unemployment that's going to be coming to people, those are going to be the foreclosures you're going to start seeing coming, right? Because they can't turn around and sell. They do have to ride this down a little bit for it to equal out before it can go back up.
Well, I've always maintained that in order for the housing market to totally collapse, we would have to have a collapse of the jobs market.
Yes.
But we still have a long time to go before we ever see foreclosures hit the market because those people are sitting on a crap ton of equity.
Yes.
Most people have over 40% equity that they can play with on their home and before they ever have to go through that foreclosure
If
process.
you owned your
Now,
home before January of 21, you're just sitting on so much equity right now in almost
mhm,
every single market in the United States. You didn't have to buy your house that long ago. And I think that's one of the things that people are kind of failing to realize is yes, did home prices came down 19% since May in some markets like they have here? Yes, they have. They were up 41% from January of 21 though.
yeah.
So if you didn't buy your home in that window post May, you probably had a little bit of equity to play with. And if you bought your home 2 years ago, you're sitting on a ton and you're not really too bothered by what you're seeing home prices because you could probably sell your house for 500. You paid 430 for it, right? For
Yeah.
example.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's why I said there would have to be a real collapse of the jobs market for homes to have a wave of homes of foreclosures to hit the market.
I agree.
Serious question. How long is your credit rating downgraded after your home has been foreclosed on? It takes a long time to rebuild credit, I think. Okay, so that will depend, but most of the time it's 7 years. But
Ooh.
I've seen, and I've worked with people that it's been as little as 5 years, even one that was just like right at 4.5.
I've had people cut it down. I will tell you a personal story. I got sucked into buying a timeshare in San Antonio, Texas one time. Um, and they actually show up as a mortgage loan.
Yes.
So I actually owned property in Florida that, this was early. I was in my early 20s and I couldn't pay for it. So I just let it go. I had a legit foreclosure on my credit that I have to work off of because of this stinking timeshare. So it took me all of 7 years. I was not in the position to have to do anything, thank goodness, but it took the full amount of time for me to get that off.
Yeah, and, the other thing too with that is, like, remember the whole wave with short sales? So you didn't have to go through the whole process of foreclosure. Banks were more than willing to work with people. It took a long time. There was nothing short about a short sale, but they were willing to so it wouldn't be such a hit on your credit. And I worked with a couple and it was 4 years. It was 4 years from a short sale that they were able to get a
Yep.
home again. So that it isn't that much of a hit. Yeah. Hello from Brazil. Hello, 6:40 PM. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Xmas Eve. That's also my birthday. Oh, happy birthday, Mrs. Cam. I appreciate you
Nice.
coming in. So Christmas, you want me to do it on Christmas Eve, the live stream? Let me know. It's your birthday. If you want me to do it on your birthday, let me know. Question: what are your thoughts on Blackstone limiting customer redemptions of their REIT fund? Is this a signal that the market is decelerating or deceleration is intensifying? Blackstone is a very big company and they like to hold on to their money as much as possible. So I think it's a control thing with them, honestly. They literally just uh put out an article with oh well, they didn't do it, but there was an article that just came out that they're working with Invitation Homes to go ahead and have $1 billion with a B, $1 billion towards buying up more real estate here in the United States.
Yeah, they're
They're
they're they're deploying and holding quite a bit of money for what they think is going to be an opportunity to buy. And I agree with her. Like I agree with you, Christina. Like there's certain things that huge companies with large amounts of money do that make them millions of dollars. Like there's a reason all airplanes are painted white, and it's because white, most of them, is the lightest paint possible. And when you do that over hundreds of thousands of planes over millions of miles, you save so much in jet fuel because the plane is that much lighter. Same thing for Blackstone. They keep tiny bits of money with every single person's deal. They're keeping it in their bank, making millions of dollars based on that. It seems like it's more of a control issue than anything else.
Yep, exactly. CC Moon with the 4.99 super chat. Oh, Eddie, where's the music? We have the music now. Listen
Oh,
to
the
this.
music?
We have music. Ready? Oh, I'm gonna pull it up here. I'm gonna hit the button, Eddie. Ready? Let's see if it plays. Did it not play? Hold on. Oh, here we go.
Super chat. Thank you.
Nice.
Super chat. Thank you.
Please tell me that's you, like your voice, but also like up paced and then totally.
No, somebody said that to me because I said
That's
I needed a last week I said I needed an audio of a super chat, and like literally within 24 hours there it was sitting in my inbox. I'm like, this is amazing. I started cracking up laughing.
that's amazing. Well
Uh,
done. Well done.
oh, you know CC Moon, I have to tell you this. This is a true story. So I did the year review, and you asked me for the crystal ball prediction for next year, and that's in my video that's coming out this Tuesday. You asked this very question last year at this time. So, crystal ball, what year do you think it will be before there will be a surplus of homes, not enough buyers? 7, 10, 12, 15 years from now? When do you think there's going to be a surplus
I mean,
of homes?
let me ask a morbid, where do you think the humans are going? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's not gonna be a surplus of homes because they will get bought up by investors and then rented back to you to
Right.
live in, right? Like, the surplus of homes would have to be if builders can. Here's the one thing builders are really great at doing. Builders are really good at slowing down the pace of their build and inventory to match market conditions, right? Meaning,
Correct.
like, they're not gonna open up new phases. They're gonna hold until next October before they release certain lots. They're going to stop releasing certain types of elevations. So you have to buy up the lots they have with the floor plans they have left in order to get that inventory out. So, like, I don't think the people are just going to keep building even when people aren't buying. So we're not going to see this huge glut of homes that nobody wants to buy. Investors will go buy them up at a lower price if that was the case, and then rent them back to you, the person or a person who couldn't buy that house, right? So just unless less humans are here and builders just keep building in a tailspin out of control, I don't think we'll see a glut of homes anytime soon. We're actually doing, look, we got different stuff going on. Investors right now, you guys should look up a company called Pad Split if you have not heard of this. Investors are literally going into 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms houses and turning them into 6 bedrooms and 7 bedrooms and renting them out room to room. And it's an amazing product for single people who are looking for affordable housing. But like, we're nowhere near having this like glut of house problem solved. We actually have the exact problem where we're turning 4 bedrooms into 7 bedrooms and renting them out by the room.
I will never, ever, ever, ever have a roommate again in my life.
Me
I did that
neither.
at college once. It lasted 1 month. And I'm like, Mom, I will do anything to have my own room. And she's like, absolutely. I told you you didn't want a roommate. And she signed me right up and I got my own room right away. I was like, oh,
Yep.
that was horrible.
Interesting.
Ian has a question. What available websites would you recommend that potential home buyers can look up to investigate the reputation or legal issues that are present with different groups? Are you talking about different builders? Is that what they're referring to?
I think if you're talking about builders, that's relatively easy. There's lots of formats out there where people left reviews about their experience with builders, understanding like that. And real estate agents the same. I think for the most part, you're probably not going to be buying a home from one of these large hedge funds. It's mostly going to be individual people. I mean, a simple Google search will tell you a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and if you're worried about, like, a neighborhood, there's 1,000 different websites, that talk about different neighborhoods. You can also go on Facebook and look up their actual, like, community page and start reading their community page. Because 'cause I'm telling you, people in neighborhoods love to post all sorts of stuff. They're like, "I heard a boom last night. Did anybody else hear that? Was that a gunshot?" And then they're like, "It was lightning, Janice. It was lightning," you know?
Yeah,
They always have that. Oh, and go on their next door. Go to their next door app and go to their neighborhood. Check that out. There's all sorts of stuff. You can find out all
always.
sorts of dirt about the neighborhood.
You might go down a rabbit trail that doesn't really lead you to the answers you want. Somebody said the Better Business Bureau. That's also another great one too.
Right, right. But if you're just trying to find out about the neighborhood itself, the neighbors are what makes a neighborhood. My husband always laughs. That's his joy on a Sunday afternoon when he goes and visits the bathroom library. He's like, "Oh my gosh, have you seen next door? Look at this. Look what she wrote. But these people are crazy." I'm like, "I know."
Next door is a
Very,
rough one. I jump on there a couple
very
times a week too.
entertaining. Very entertaining. Mark has a question. It says, question, in the first 30 days, how does HUD know that someone is not acting for an investor, buyer, undercover? Okay, so when you put in your offer, you have to bring it with an offer letter. If you're an entity like an LLC or anything like that, it shows up in your letter, right? And then also when you put in that offer and it goes to title, the title company says who's purchasing this and who's signing, right? And I've had it happen where somebody was trying to be sneaky and they try to put it under their pool company name. And then HUD said, we're gonna have to put this back in the market unless you're gonna buy it in your own name and you're gonna live there. And they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna buy it under our own name. So, there is a way for them to find out. You know, I'm sure there's people out there in this universe, because not everybody's on the up and up, that go in there, buy it under their name. Then once they have it for like 60 to so many days, they go ahead, turn around and buy it under a company name. I'm sure they could do that. That's a lot of hassle for a big company to do that. I don't see the big box companies doing something like that. They're just buying it. They don't care.
Yeah.
There's no regulation to stop them. But that could change very soon. I don't know if you saw, there's a couple bills that are sitting, one in the House, there's one in the Senate that they're going over. They're going to be voting on to look further into these corporate investors, because before it was one of those things that they were like, oh, they only do a small part of the market. And now that they're seeing how much they have chopped into the market, they're more willing to look into it. Atlanta was one of the biggest ones. They bought a lot of homes around the Atlanta. And
Dude,
so,
you and I have been talking about this the whole time we've been coming on, and I've actually come around to your thinking on this a little bit. I didn't think there was any way the government was going to step in. And like, if you would have asked me a year and a half ago, there's no way the government was going to step in and regulate investors buying houses. And I don't know what will get passed and what won't. The political side of this, who knows? But I am much more of the thought process. There has to be. I don't think investors should not be able to buy. Period. Right? Like, I think that's good for the market. I think it makes sense for a lot of people. Right? Like, I will even say that I don't even think owning single family doors, unless you own a bunch of them, is really a great wealth building strategy. Anyways, that's a whole other conversation. I think you can get really jammed up if you only own a couple of doors. It's not really as lucrative as people think it is. But I think for the large investors coming up and buying, like you've talked about, neighborhoods, whole blocks, things like that, there has to be some kind of, and I don't know what the solution is, but I've come around on that. Something's got to happen with that.
well, my fear is this: in order to pacify the public, they'll pass some bill that sounds on the surface like it's
Yes.
going to be something good,
And then tell
but
everybody all the loopholes.
yeah, and it really means absolutely nothing, and they can continue to do what they're doing, but they're like, but we signed a bill and a law that said there were, the buyback, not so many homes in single family residence bill, like I could
Yeah.
just, it's gonna be some stupid something like that, it's gonna be something ridiculous like that, and it won't mean or do anything, but that makes them sound good. That's what I fear. But they, even with the new, because they've had an affordable housing plan that had started all the way back in May. They updated it recently, and at the end of that plan, they're actually going to be having a meeting addressing all the corporate investors. So
I just
something
feel
that
like
was like, we don't need to worry about it. Now the federal government is like, yeah, we need to get worried about it. And it
maybe I
isn't
just don't
just on
understand.
one side or the other. Both sides are talking about how much investors have purchased homes in the United States.
And maybe I'm just seeing like a huge blind spot, but it just seems like it would be so easy to get around. I mean, you can start new LLCs and new C corps and S corps on anything you want. Like, so anybody with a lick of skill in that area can still buy whatever they want. They're just putting it under different corporations and shielding it other
Absolutely.
ways. I just don't really see. I don't really see how it's going to be able to stop too much. I don't know. I'm with you though. I'm hoping, because I agree now. I think something needs to be done.
I think they're going to put, like, there was discussion in that paperwork, that they would put a limit to 1,000 houses, before they have a tax lien or whatever, tax, whatever. I forget what the verbiage they use, but we'll see what comes of it. Parrish has a question. What do you think real estate prices will do in the state of Hawaii? There is a severe housing shortage here due to regulation and limited land. Do you think the prices will continue to come down? Do you think that prices will come down? Hawaii has been like that since I was an itty bitty witty. It's been like that. I visited Hawaii in 1992, and it was like that. And if anything that I know about Hawaii, it's one of those states that always continues to have growth as far as prices is concerned. They
Yeah.
have made attempts, though, in Hawaii to help. So anytime there is a new development of like condos in the area, they have to, by law, regulate X amount of homes be for local people to be able to purchase at local, set prices, basically. And I don't know what to tell you. I know that the
Yeah.
list to be on that affordable housing list is freaking like 10 years long. You know, it
Well,
takes
and just like your second kind of line, there's severe housing shortage due to regulation and limited land. They're just not, and I know Hawaii is a little bit different because it is making its own land, but not usable land that you can put a house on probably anytime soon. I don't see how prices come down when you have a limited space to add more and regulations that limit that, right? You know what I mean? It just, like I said, I
there's
don't know
a
anything
lot
about the
of
market, but
foreign
that's
investors in
what I'm talking
Hawaii.
about.
A
Yeah.
lot.
Well, and I know there's a big political side of investing in Hawaii, and property prices being shot up, and people who are native to the islands being priced out just due to tourists and corporations and that type of thing. So
And
I can't
they
imagine
have
they're coming
every
back.
right to be ticked.
Yeah,
Every right to be ticked.
that's 100%. I agree. It doesn't seem like the environment where prices are coming down, though.
No, not at all. Nope. Torched 04 question: what are your recommendations in terms of options for people who are facing a 1,600 to 2,000 in rents in their area? I can't buy, and I'm seriously looking at a single wide in a park for 43K. There's nothing wrong with looking at a park. Don't let anybody, if that's what you can afford, and that is the option that you have in front of you. If you feel safe and you feel comfortable and that's what you can afford, there's nothing wrong with that. Not a thing. That is one of those things I talk about on my channel all the time. If that is what the housing option for you, that it's affordable, who gives two flying monkey farts what people think that you should be living in? It's none of their business. And I don't know what kind of manufactured home you're looking at, but anything that's been built in the last 10 to 15 years, they're nice. They're really nice. They're really, really, really nice. And sometimes, in many cases, you can't even tell that they are a manufactured home. So, like, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you can afford, then do it. If you're going to buy it in a park and then you have the lot rents there, I would really look into that because they can. Now, this is one of those things that institutional investors have been doing. They've been buying manufactured home parks and jacking up the rent so that forces people out of their homes so they can go ahead and basically get the manufactured home for free because somebody's purchased that. They can't afford to move it. Now they have this manufactured home sitting on a lot that people are paying rent on. So now they have a free house and then someone else can move in there and they're just renting out that whole space. So they got a free house for nothing. Totally gross, so sickening. So be careful on the lot or the place that you're planning on buying this manufactured home for 43,000. Make sure that they see if they have a leveled park, where they can't raise it X amount of dollars per year, or that it's in a cooperative. Find out what's going on as far as that, and talk to the neighbors, see what they have to say. Neighbors are good. Neighbors will tell you everything. You're
Yeah,
like,
this
oh,
is your realm. You know everything about that. The rents part of it. My mom's actually been in property management here in DFW on the apartment side for years. She's always worked for big property management companies. And she says average two bedrooms now are $1,700 for an apartment. So like I feel like it's where they were 1,100 pre-pandemic. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. So
that
I
is terrible.
understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew that some of the areas were starting to come down, I was thinking that like we were going to see rents come down a lot more because they had gone up so high. And it does seem that some areas are leveled off, but some areas are still like I I know somebody in your area, they were paying 2,500. Now their renewal is up and it's 3,200.
Oh yeah.
3,200.
Yeah. I told
And
you
they're like,
I lived in a pretty nice apartment up here in North Texas, and my rent was going up about $600 a month, and I was like, absolutely not. Right? Like I'm done with that. So
how can people afford it? That's the
yeah.
part. See, the thing is, it's so out of whack because you got these rent prices that are going up exponentially, right? Then the cost of living has gone up exponentially. Gas has been all over the place. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. I mean, clothing, everything we purchase from here on out has been more, everything medical, everything. How can people afford these rents and afford to live? The answer is they can't.
They
Do you
can't.
know that the average American is spending about 42% of their income on housing? It should never, ever be that way. It's so out of whack of what it should be. But the people have no choice. They have no choice. So
And
it's
that's
like,
the thing is there is you have to have a place to live. And that's why you see things like pad split and cohabitation houses and stuff. Like you are seeing people having to make ends meet in that specific place, in that specific demographic of the market, because they have to.
Just makes me so
I
mad.
know.
I don't think housing should be, um I mean, I'm all for people making some money on their house, absolutely, that's not what I'm saying, but it's gotten to the point where it's such a commodity. It's like we're playing like, you know, only few people get a house, and you're gonna have to beg for it in order to get it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And even at this point, even at this time when, sellers are being more they're willing to negotiate more, it's still so unaffordable. When we were buying our first house, we were sweating it, but we were able to find an affordable house.
Yep.
It needed a lot of work, but we were able to find one. There isn't one available unless it's almost nearly a tear down. You're gonna be
Well, and you
working
and you
on
and you the reality, I think, is how some people are making it work is they're having to sacrifice time. Here locally in DFW, obviously, we're spread out over a large land mass, so this might
Mhm.
work a little bit different here than it does in other places. People are just having to move way further out, meaning,
Right.
like, living close to your job and having that luxury of spending 30 minutes to work, 30 minutes back, more time with your family. People are having to sacrifice that and maybe move 45 minutes to an hour out, which if you live in DFW, traffic is god awful. So that could increase by 30 minutes on any given day, depending on what everybody's doing in front of you. And just having to sacrifice that time, right, with their family or with whatever they're doing to find a place that's affordable and keep the job they have, but have to live way out here to make it happen.
Yeah,
You
you're
know?
right. Wes, Merry Christmas, you
Um,
and your family, Christina. All I want for Christmas is a housing prices to keep falling. I'm with you, I'm with you. I
Make it
actually did
work
a
for a little bit.
poll. I
Make it
actually
work.
did a poll, and I'm like, "How do you feel about the housing market?" Are prices going down? Like, I added a couple other things, and then I said, "Prices are still too high," and like 82% were saying, "Yep, prices are still too high." You
Oh
know?
yeah, yeah. I think for a lot of people right now, that's the sentiment.
Yeah, yeah. Question, is now the right time to build a house, or should I wait a couple more years? That will be totally 100% on your financial situation.
Yeah.
How much is it going to cost for you to have that land prepped? How much are building materials going to be? You need to talk to a financial advisor and a specialist, mortgage broker, and find out if now would be a right time or wait a couple years. We don't know what's going to happen with building materials. At one point, a couple years ago, lumber prices were so high, it was absolutely ridiculous, and you couldn't get drywall. They were getting secondhand nails from different countries. It was just total chaos, right? Then now we're at a point where like cement is very expensive, but lumber is coming down quite
Yeah,
quickly.
lumber seems to have stabilized quite a bit.
Yeah, so who knows? I wish I couldn't tell you that in 2 years would be a better situation than it is today. I couldn't tell
Yeah.
you that.
Yeah. My general rule of thought on this is, and this is the realtor token line, is while you're evaluating that, understanding that if you are renting, now if you own your home, it may make sense to stay where you're at, but if you are renting, in most cases, the financial side of things, if you can make it work, are better for you to start building equity sooner than later, right? Now,
Mhm.
that may not be your specific situation as general advice, right? But in most cases, if you wait a few more months to see where this stabilizes into spring of next year, how do you feel? I really feel like spring of next year is going to be super telling on where we're going, right? The last couple of years have been hard to tell what time of the year we're in. It's just kind of hot all the time. I don't really know. There is usually some delineation in how January, February look versus how March, April, May, June look versus how August, September, October looks, right? Like, I don't really know what next year is going to look like at all, but I feel like there's going to be some more balance and understanding. I hope, because these last couple of years have not been fun as a real estate agent either.
No, but, now they say that, we're finally seeing the effects of the rate being, you know, increased exponentially. We're seeing the fruits of our labor, so to speak. I am seeing more and more people lose their jobs, like
Mhm.
you had said. Um, I'm just interested to see how many people after the first of the year is jobs are going to lay them off. I'm interested to see the effect of that, because I've always said, cuz Jerome Powell said this. He said, in order to get housing under control, there's going to be some Americans that hurt, and in order for that to happen, there's going to have to be a tampering of the economy, and some people are going to be losing their jobs. And people that are in the mortgage business know that right now, like a lot of mortgage companies folded under because they made their whole business plan about refinancing. Nobody's refinancing right now. So
Yeah.
that business model is a failure. That affects people that are in the business of inspecting homes. That it affects people that are in the business of redecorating homes. That affects people that are in appraisal business. So a lot of those businesses are drying up. So those people that were making bank are now, having to reel it back.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll see how this all plays out. There's so many different factors that are to come into play. I'm interested. I think January, February, March, after Mardi Gras. After Mardi Gras, let's have a conversation again, and I'll have a better pulse of what's going on and what the environment looks like. It's
Yeah.
really hard the first couple months of the year to determine that.
It always January, February always feel like just the biggest real estate desert in the world, for me
Yeah.
at least.
Ian says a builder messes up the corner of a foundation and uses a boulder to prop it up. 40 years later, it's discovered. Any recourse in the US, does the statute of limitations factor in? This is going to depend on your state, right? So, our
Yeah.
state, if it was 40 years later, there's absolutely not a single thing you could do about it. But if it was within the first 5 years, you started noticing cracks on the inside of your home, you had a inspector come out, like a foundation inspector come out, and they're like, "This is crumbling underneath your feet." Yes, you could do something, but 40 years later, good luck with that. What do you say
Yeah,
there?
chances are that builder's not even in business anymore. That's the biggest issue is, right, who are you going to sue? I
Mhm.
do know up in Connecticut, up in the northeast, they have like crumbling foundation issues, and some of those people, they had like a state fund that was helping those people to like lift their houses up and redo the foundation. Of course, that's just till the money runs out, but I don't really know what recourse you would have with a company that's probably long gone and the people responsible for it no longer in the business, unless the state has some sort of fund, which you know.
Ian, that's a really good point though,
Big.
because I started thinking about how many builders, because we had builders here that in the last couple of years that were supposed to build things like a barndominium, and they'd start the project and then just disappeared.
Mhm.
We had some so-called builders that I've never heard of in my life start several houses, and then they had that hurricane that happened in Florida, and then they disappeared. They took people's deposits and everything, and that happened to us during we had a really big flood in 2016. People that came in said they were going to fix people's houses, put the deposit down on getting a roof fixed or, their drywall replaced or whatever. And they just disappeared. I'm interested to see what happens with some of these houses that were built with materials that weren't the same materials that they would typically use because there was such a building material shortage during the pandemic. What's going to happen with those houses? I have a feeling that we're going to see a lot of them uh, that are they're going to be in trouble.
It's hard because you have to wait for the house to start to deteriorate and fall apart and get so bad that you can sue. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't want to be the one finding out what happens on one of those.
I know, and especially if think about like the couple that like bid, 20, $30,000 over just to get the house. And, as soon as they walked in the door, they've had nothing but problems.
And that
And
was
then
happening. The crazy thing about that is that you're talking like a 10% over situation. There were times last year that wasn't even touching the house. People were like on a $300,000 house, people were going 50 grand over. Like for I couldn't even imagine when I got into real estate, none of the buyers I had would have been able to do that. They didn't have an
Mhm.
extra 50 grand.
No.
And I also don't think these people did. I think they had 50 grand, probably were $450,000 house buyers, but couldn't play up there, right? Because they were getting hammered by people going way, way over it and had to come down to buy the $350,000 house or whatever, right?
I
Like
I saw more cash come into this market than I've ever seen in history.
it wasn't
I've
even about
never seen like they're like, "I'll just bid 40,000 over." I'm like, "You have 40,000? You're 27 years old. How do you have 40?" I
we
didn't
have
have
a client
I
right now
barely
who
had $100 in
I
my
am helping him
account.
sell his house. We were not the agents who represent him on the buy side. He is selling the house. He paid $700,000 for the house. He is willing to sell it in cash. He's willing to sell it for $600,000 now just to get out from under it and get his $600,000 back in cash because that was not the decision that he thinks he should have made now. Now, this gentleman owns multiple properties. Money's not an issue. I don't think most people make that decision, but there are people out there like that making those decisions.
Yes. Yeah, and that happens in any market.
It does.
Eric says, "Christina, I had to move to a smaller town to afford rent." I've had to do that. Nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah, I've had to do that. My husband and I, our first home together was tax credit housing. That's what Eddie and I lived in, tax credit apartments.
Yeah, I would
We were
I agree with Terrence.
broke.
I agree with Terrence on the other side. I call that wisdom, man. I think look, and this is a slight mindset side note. I think we care so much about what people think of the house we live in. I did this with my house, right? Like we have these tile floors in both living rooms that I can't stand. And I try to exclude those when I'm shooting video in the house because I would rather have wood floors. At the same time, nobody cares about my flooring. Nobody cares about it at all. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in what the appearance of what we think we should live in, how it should look to other people because they're showing their granite countertops and their brushed nickel stuff. Dude, if you're saving money, you are winning
You're
every
winning.
single time. I
Yeah.
promise you.
I don't even want anybody in my house. I'm just gonna
No,
buy
I'm
whatever I
all
want
about just
anyway.
saving money now at this point. I'm like, does this cost a little bit less? I want that then.
You know, somebody was asking the question earlier if they should buy the $43,000 manufactured home in the park. And I'm gonna ask you this too. There's one more thing I want you to consider. If this is just a stepping stone for you because this is what you can afford, hold on to that property, right? So that way in the future, say 3 years from now, you get yourself a really good job, but keep that $43,000 property and rent it out. Now you have an income producing property for yourself.
Yep.
So keep that, you know, don't let that go. Some of the best, like there's people on YouTube, you can look them up. They call themselves the trailer park millionaires, and that's exactly what they did. They started off in a manufactured home that barely cost them any money. They got on their feet and then they figured it all out, and then they were able to buy their house. Then they started with that as a rental and then bought other rentals in that manufactured home park, fixed them up so they could rent them out, and then they had rental properties. So
Yeah.
that's something to consider. I just want you to think about that.
That's a good point.
They rent out so good too.
I
Every
believe it.
rental, everybody that I know that has manufactured homes as rental properties, they're the best renters ever. They always pay
Yeah.
in cash. And they pay you on your Cash App now. They used to just pay you cash in the hand. Now they just go right over Venmo.
All you gotta do is print it off, hand it to your accountant, and be done.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Um, when will the housing market go back to normal? So that it will both be a buyers and sellers market. Some areas are seeing that already. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this for some of these markets is the new normal, right? I think, for instance, DFW is not going back to what it was pre-pandemic.
Right.
This is kind of our new housing benchmark now. It will
Correct.
flatten out at some point. It'll find it, but it's not going post, pre-21. So I think in some degrees for a lot of markets, you're living normal. Welcome, right? Like
Mhm.
also, I will say for our market specifically, we call 5 to 7 months of inventory a balanced market.
Right.
There are parts of DFW that have that very easily right now where buyers are
Really?
able to make some hay. I feel like we're very balanced right now. Homes are sitting on the market for 35 to 45 days. You're
That's
having to price reduce. You're not finding your buyer on day one before. Buyers are able to ask for concessions. Sellers have to give. Right now, we're operating for the most part in DFW in a normalish market. While we do still have inventory lows and prices may still sting for some people, I do think it's normal-ish here for sure.
I will say that some of the markets that have been most heavily affected, the one thing I can say for absolute certain that yes, they're seeing price reductions, but if you are on the lowest scale of the if you're in that first time home buyer category for homes, those prices have not budged. So if
No,
you're looking for the 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom homes with a little tiny yard, those houses have not budged in price. And
I
in most
call
areas,
expired
even in the
listings.
hottest markets, they have either maintained or still continued to go up fractionally, but I mean, they've gone up still.
One of my lead generation sources is calling expired listings every day, just the homes that come off the market. And so I
Mhm.
get a pretty good gauge of what's selling and what's not. There ain't many homes under 250 coming off the market here,
Correct.
right? You almost have to have at least that to play, unless you're getting a small 1-bedroom condo in an older part of town, right? And like I said, prices are higher here. But
250 for a
yeah,
starter home.
yeah,
For
yeah,
like what, not necessarily a starter home, but what like basically the start of your housing market.
yeah, yeah.
$250,000.
Not saying there's not anything below that, but they're few and far between.
The median price of a home here in the United States is $368,000.
Isn't that
The median
crazy?
income of the United States American is 68,000.
No,
Does not match.
they do not match up at all.
Do not match up at all. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. So yeah, when do I think it'll be back to normal? It just depends on the area. But if we're talking about affordable, it will never be affordable
Yeah.
unless they start building more affordable homes. That's where I'm at.
Yeah,
That's where
there's
I
just
think.
and the crappy part about this is like this is one of the things that I think you and I have talked about before, but there's just not many builders getting into the market to do things for the masses. Like the unfortunate, I'm not saying there's none, but most people who
Right.
are building right now are building for profit and max profit.
Of course, right? So they I don't know, you don't probably don't follow the Affordability Act that they're trying to, they're doing all this stuff right now. So they actually have been working with cities to open up some land that was
Mhm.
either considered commercial or multi-use or whatever, and building that for multifamily and single family dwellings. So that way they're cutting through some of the red tape so we can get some of the building done quicker.
Yeah.
If you cut that red tape, that cuts a lot of the expense for the builder. So it's possible that we could see something opening up in some cities. Some cities, it's going to be the more populated cities, not your rural areas. But they even have some plans for rural areas as well. You have to go through. I actually did a video on it about the housing plan in order to get more affordable housing because they realize it's a problem. They
Yeah.
do realize it.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're at least addressing it. If they do nothing, at least it's on paper that they tried.
Did they acknowledge it existed?
Yeah, well, yeah, because like even with the corporate investor things, they kept brushing under the carpet. Oh, you're making a big deal on a nothing. No, this isn't a problem. This isn't a problem. And then it was like, oh yeah, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Finally, somebody said it. Yeah. So Diamond Rush Media says, question: are there any reports of cash bought houses versus financed anywhere? Thinking cash bought won't turn over, it would all be financed. Here's the thing though. Some people that buy cash bought homes finance it after they bought it cash.
Yes.
They bought it cash just to secure the house to win the offer. And then as soon as they buy it cash, the first thing they do is go ahead and get a mortgage on it.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that, and that's probably what makes the most sense if you're getting a good interest rate, right? It really, for people who are going to have, here's my thing is, if you are sitting on five or $600,000 in cash, you have found out at some point in your life how to make money, right? Like
mhm.
you don't accidentally make that money. I'm not saying nobody has, but you don't accidentally have that much money typically. And so those people are going to use those funds to deploy those funds as intelligently as possible. And
Right.
out of those 22%, I would have no idea what the number is. I would gather quite a few of them refinanced and got their money back and are now paying a note just like most other people.
Yeah. It says it varies by individual market. By cash sales remain strong even as the market cools due to the persistent low supply of homes and increasing expense of buying a house with a mortgage, thanks to higher interest rates, according to the report from the National Association of Realtors. In September of 2020, cash sales represented about 22% of existing home sales, which is a slight decline from a year earlier. Slight decline. Despite the rapid rise of home prices, the median price for over 450,000 buyers have more eager to pay cash or cash solution in order to avoid higher interest rates on a mortgage. This has kept many first-time home buyers out of the market, according to NAR's 2022 profile of home and buyers and sellers. Only 26% of buyers were first-timers, a record low since record keeping began 40 years ago. That's what usually drives housing markets is
Yep.
first time home buyers, and it's been a record low. Many sellers also prefer to accept all cash to avoid the possibility of financing delays and reduce the chances of offer falling through. Hence the notion cash is king. I will say this too. I have noticed that more when we go in the MLS, you can always see, we get a report that's called the hot sheet. And anytime I see a house that goes back on the market, it always is because of financing. So I don't know what happens, but there's been a lot more declines in financing. One more thing about the financing, because we just touched on this. I have been noticing the product of interest only being pushed, where they're doing
Yes.
the the funny loans, the funny money loans again.
I don't.
Um,
Who does an
I
interest only loan really appeal to? I've never figured out the market for an interest only loan.
Well, it appeals to somebody who believes that the houses will continue to increase by at least 3% every single year, and that when the house is set to reset in the 3-year period, that they'll have enough equity to be able to refinance the house and, put everything in
Sure.
there. Um Yeah, that was a big mistake in years previous.
Yeah.
Do not fall up for that trap just because they say you can afford it. Be very realistic, very, very realistic. Before you even think about doing that kind of loan, I want you to meet with other loan officers, other mortgage brokers in your area that may not even offer that package so they can explain to you all the ins and outs and pros and cons of doing something like that.
Yeah.
It hasn't really been really beneficial to a lot of people, and a lot of people lost their homes in years past by using a loan product by
I
that. So
just
just be very, very cautious.
I will tell you the most of the people that will ask for that or rent to own type of options typically are thinking it's a more affordable way to
Correct.
buy a home. And it's
Correct.
like their first loan they've ever got in.
Correct.
It's just usually not. It's a loan product for an experienced buyer who understands exactly what their needs are, exactly the direction they're going, you have a very tight grip on their finances. And typically, if you're looking for the most affordable option, it may be because you haven't quite figured out exactly where your money needs to go and how it's going to work for you best in the future. And those types of loans get super, super dangerous if you're not really sure how they're going to work for you.
They typically have that prepayment penalty too.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you were thinking about refinancing in 3 years because you've earned that equity, there may be a penalty that is associated with that specific loan. So all that equity you could have gotten goes towards the penalty.
Yep.
Just all I'm saying is be careful. Read the fine print before you decide to do something like that. But the fact that they're pushing it more and advertising it more, it makes me nervous. Like,
Yeah.
why are banks willing to give these kooky loans out?
Yep.
I don't know. Kristina says no.
Yeah. I wouldn't go anywhere near those.
Yeah. Oh, if anybody hasn't been in the chat, so next week, me and Eddie are doing a pre-recorded show. I'm going to dress up for Christmas. I'm going to wear a little Christmas outfit.
Nice.
Just let me know if you want me to put it out on Christmas Eve or on Christmas Day, because it will be on Sunday. Christmas on a Sunday this year. And there is a questionnaire. Like if you want your question answered by me and Eddie, it's going to be the Grinch that stole real estate. That's what we're naming the stream. The Grinch that stole real estate. And well, I'm going to answer your questions. I have not even looked at the questions. I'm going to answer them live, just like here, like I normally do. And we're going to be having a lot of fun. Eddie's going to put that out there. Foreclosure rates in all 50 states in November of 2022. Thank you, Eddie.
There you go. That's a good one.
District of Columbia. Oh, the bottom of the barrel right there is South Dakota. Let's look at the top. Let's look at the top 10. Go all the way down, Eddie. Kansas, Montana, Tennessee. Tennessee. Oh, I love that song.
Nice.
That was such a good song.
Good reference.
Massachusetts, North Carolina, 10. Go all the way to top 10, Eddie. Keep scrolling down. I know Louisiana's 22nd. Keep scrolling, Eddie. Keep scrolling.
Oh, Texas is 20th. All right.
Yep.
New Jersey,
wow, that's kind of
like
high. You guys are high up there. We got Georgia, New York, Indiana, Nevada. That doesn't surprise me. Ohio, Wyoming, that's surprising. South Carolina, New Jersey, like I told you, got a high foreclosure rate. Delaware, freaking Delaware, and Illinois. And if you really want to make people annoyed, go with Illinois.
What do you think? What do you think? Like, there's some other states I don't know anything about. And the only reason I bring this up is because I know Wyoming is where a lot of really, really wealthy people register their supercars. Like they own properties there to register their supercars there.
Yes.
So like whenever you see like some absurd $3 million car, it probably has like maybe it's Montana. Might have a Montana plate on it, but I wonder if there's something to do with that part of the world where like so many people are moving to Wyoming because they just think it's amazing and it's very expensive. I don't know. Why are so many people
I find that a lot of the people that live in Wyoming are up in age. Like they're up in age.
Okay.
I think a lot of them have taken on reverse mortgages, and I think that's where a lot of that has come from.
Yeah.
That would be my assessment just from the little bit I know. My aunt used to live in Wyoming. She lives in Montana now with her.
And I've also heard it's like New York is one of the hardest states to get foreclosed on from a time. Like you can be in your home for like 4 years in New York during the foreclosure process. Again, don't know about that, but
California is really bad too.
Yeah. It takes a really long time to get through that process here or there.
Well, there was I mean, and it like, the foreclosure process can even be delayed even more. So if like, Eddie and I have a house, we haven't paid our mortgage. We get in a big fight, he says he wants to divorce me, and then we file bankruptcy on top of it all.
Just keeps getting
This
pushed back.
house would sit here for 10 years before it was ever back on the market just to get through the court system.
Yeah.
Like, it's a nightmare. It's a real nightmare. I've talked about it before. There was a house down the road that happened to. I mean, a tree fell through the sucker, and
It's
like
just sitting there.
just sitting there. But somebody bought it. Now somebody lives in it now. It had a nice swimming pool and everything. It was such a shame. Anyways,
Wow.
I saw something come up on the screen. I missed it. Eddie, what's up? Hello,
Hey,
Eddie.
Eddie.
Nice to see you again.
I know Eddie now because of you. Eddie's in my world because of this show.
I know. I know. I see him on your Facebook timeline.
I know. I love it.
I just heard that Lennar Homes is in a hard straits because they built so many homes for rentals. Now they have to offload them. Where do you see this in 6 months?
What am I
They
allowed to say as a real
offload them to investors?
What am I
They
allowed to
don't
say
care.
about home builders as a licensed real estate agent in Texas? I don't know, so I'll just say whatever I want.
Uh-huh.
Lennar's homes are trash, and I wouldn't buy one to begin with. Lennar was the first builder during the pandemic to start cutting costs in every way imaginable, right? They no longer
Mhm.
wanted their buyers to have representation, right? They were telling the buyers, if you want your own representation, you have to go pay for it out of your own pocket, right?
Wow.
Like they were telling builders very quickly, or telling people very quickly that they were going to increase the price of the homes. Lennar was one of the first builders that started kicking people out of homes and essentially saying, "Hey, look, you can have your earnest money deposit back, but we're going to put the home back on the market, right? Like we're going to put this inferior refrigerator or not refrigerator, stove or whatever in there. Too bad, you got to take it." Now, builders all have these clauses in their contracts that they can replace things or whatever. Lennar took extreme advantage of that, and they weren't a great reputable builder to begin with. And then you add on kind of the fact that they just went completely rogue during the pandemic. I would say here locally, I probably wouldn't jam with Lennar too much unless it just makes complete sense for you. There's probably another builder that you can get around the same price that's going to have a little bit better reputation. So that's
If
what I
they're
think.
selling their houses to corporate investors, I don't care. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't care. I do not, that we don't have them here. This is not a builder that's here.
yeah.
Uh, Lennar offers 5,000 homes to investors with buyer demand sliding. Yeah, this is what makes this specific housing market different than in housing markets of the past. So during the last crash, when home builders were underwater, nobody from Wall Street was knocking on their door to buy up their supply of houses. Those houses sat vacant, unfinished, and deteriorated to nothing, right? This time, if a builder is getting to this point of the year and they need to close out all their houses, they're calling somebody and they will buy up all those houses. And maybe they are taking a loss, but at least they're not sitting on it for 6 to 12 months before an investor comes in and buys it. They would much rather sell 12, 15, 20 houses at a time and get them all done at a discount than having to go to individual buyers and like negotiate those prices. This is not going to affect them as a company, not one teeny tiny itty bitty little bit.
Nope. And like I
No.
said, like you were saying, they just want to go redeploy that cash to something else, and they've got
Yep.
tied up in it. My question to you would be: in the hottest real estate market that has ever existed on the entire planet, when we can still say that the housing market still kind of aggressive, and there's still an inventory shortage in some places, why is Lennar sitting on 5,000 homes that nobody else is? It's probably a quality issue. That's
Yeah.
and nobody else got 5,000 houses to go sell to investors, and I wonder why
Yeah.
that is.
It says one of the biggest U.S. home builders is offering to sell thousands of homes to rental landlords at a time when sales to everyday buyers have slumped. Lennar is cir- uh, is circulating lists of properties to potential inquiries, according to people familiar with the matter, who asked not to be named because the process is private. Many of the properties are located in Southwest and Southeast, the people said, with builder giving landlords the chance to acquire entire subdivisions in some cases.
Wow.
I I take this with a total grain of salt. They probably intended it. They probably built those at the beginning with the intent to sell it to a specific uh and private investor, that private investor backed out at the last minute and they're like, crap. And now they're having
I
to.
love them.
Oh, wow. Lennar Corporation hit with a class action lawsuit over alleged mismanagement of
Told you.
employee retirement plans. Who would have thought? Corporations don't do anything bad with money. They don't mismanage stuff. This is hogwash. Yeah, this has nothing to do with their homes. It has to do with their company itself. But yeah, there's always there's always more to the story than meets the eye, that's for sure. Question: My wife and I are combined income of 250,000 and live in a normal home. How do people with an income far below us afford homes in the 400 to 600,000 range?
They don't.
But like, here's the thing, as well as I do, that you meet some of these people and they're like, they pull up in their BMW and you see him pull up in his Mercedes and they come out and she is dressed to the nines and he's in his suit and they come in there and they give you your letter. And you're like, man, how are these guys pulling it together? And then when you're getting to the loan process, they're like, they are broke as a joke. This is the only thing they can afford.
Just razor thin. Yeah.
Yeah. They are skating on thin ice.
I'm experiencing this right now, right? Like I'm in this business and I'm even experiencing, we need an extra bedroom. Like that thing I said about the school earlier, that's not a fictitious conversation. It's an actual problem we have right now. Like we need a house in a very specific, not school district, school, and it needs to be a certain size. We need a 5th bedroom, which is hard to find anyways. And what makes sense for what I would be willing to pay for something, I look at the house and I'm like, there's no way I am paying that for that house. I know it's going to cost me X amount of money to go in there and make it the way I want. Don't want to live in it the way it is now. And then so therefore I'm like, we'll just stay here and 2 of the boys will have to share a room because I'm not going out there and spending that. Even though I could, I don't want the monthly mortgage payment attached to it. It's too much. It makes me uncomfortable. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. So to answer his question, this is the problem. There are a lot of people who can't afford to buy the house they need or want. And I understand to some degree, home ownership is a privilege at a certain level, right? At a certain level, homeowners, but owning a base level home and having the ability to own a home should still be available for 70% of the working population, right?
There are
It's not.
so many people that have good credit scores, that have great jobs, that have a good savings. They could even do a 20% down payment, but there's nothing in their price range for them to purchase.
Yeah.
Nothing. And like, if you look at that poll that I did put on my channel yesterday, there is a comment in there. They're like, I've been looking for 2 years. I have the money. I have everything, and I cannot find anything to purchase. That's the problem. That is the problem because there are people.
The regulation part is hard because, like, look, I know there's people in the comments who are like, we should regulate it. Here's the one biggest issue with that. We can regulate investors. You can't regulate private citizens from recognizing equity on their home. And most of what people get their brains on fire about is thinking all of this has to do with investors. Investors still at this point are buying up and selling a very small percentage. These are normal Joes and Janes, just like all of us, who bought a house at a good time and now they can make a bunch of money on it. Chances are you are buying your house from some family who that's the only house they own, and they're going to use that money to go buy their next house. So it's not like they're jamming you up. They're having to go and take that money and do the same thing you just had to do with your house, which is either overpay or deal with the market or deal with whatever. And I understand there are other factors coming into play, but most people, you can't tell me I bought a house 10 years ago and I shouldn't be able to make as much money on it as possible. Nor I think would you want that to be the rule if you were in that position as a private home buyer, right? So
right.
the regulation part is hard because what do you regulate? You can't regulate people's ability to recognize equity on their home.
What they should be doing is building more affordable homes. That's what they should regulate, the fact that, like, if you're going to do a neighborhood, at least 10% or 20% should be like, you should have a spectrum of houses. It can't be all $650,000 houses.
That only works if the government jumps in as the one doing the building, because who's the builder that you're saying you have to take less profits to build lower level houses while this builder gets to build a nice shit?
Give them a discount. Give them an incentive. Tell them that if they do this, you get this incentive for that piece of land or for these building materials. It's been done before.
Is that piece of land going to be somewhere where somebody wants to buy? Because I'll tell you, in DFW, the stuff that hasn't been bought up and built on, there's a reason why. People don't want to live there. It's in a crappy neighborhood. It's near something they don't want to be by, right? Like, we're not talking about desirable chunks of land in this scenario. It's the leftover stuff that's going to be built on, right? Like,
there's even a market for the leftover stuff that nobody wants to live on. There's
I
a
believe that.
market for that. There are people that are just want a good place to be able to, have a two-bedroom house with one small garage so they could have a piece of the pie in the real estate market. They could start their lives, with these little small houses so that way in the future they can step up and, like at least have something. It's better
Yeah.
than paying a freaking landlord rent,
Yeah.
and it's
It
it's
is. It is. I
done
agree.
before.
It seems like a pretty tough problem to solve.
If there's a problem, I'll solve it. Check out my hook with my DJ
You're on one
revolver.
today with your 90s. You were hitting some Arrested Development earlier. You're taking it
No,
all
but
the way
no,
back.
this is serious. So,
I
like
agree.
in California, Lakewood subdivision was built right after World War II. They were building, this is no lie, almost 120 houses a day because they learned how to assembly line building homes.
Mhm.
Those homes still stand to this day. When they were purchasing those houses, they were $8,000 at a 4.5 interest rate. People were lined up down the road. This was supposedly too far away from Los Angeles, but no, of course, then it ended up not being too far away from Los Angeles. And they had millions of these, like not millions. It was, I think they made 17,500 homes. I think that's what the number is.
Mhm.
And they were 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom houses with little tiny garages. Right now, those same houses that were 800,000 are over $787,000.
Well, look, DFW is actually a post-World War II city, so we have a ton of this 1950s construction that you're
They're
talking
still
about.
there,
Yeah, and they're still there, and they're awesome.
rock
They're
solid.
amazing homes. Honestly, I would rather buy a pier and beam from the late 50s or early 60s and redo that than buy something brand new around here. In all
I'm saying
seriousness.
that can be done again. There
Yeah,
is no reason why it couldn't. The
yeah,
regulations, they know how to do it. It's that you gotta get those people on the same page to do it.
yeah.
There's nothing different. There's nothing different about our land or anything else that doesn't make it possible for that to happen. A lot of those homes, the rooms were and everything were already pre-built in a factory. They just set it together and drilled it in. They were true modular homes. Most people don't know that. It can be done again. If
I
they
believe
wanted to fix the
There's the old Sears
problem,
and
they
Roebuck
would fix
homes.
it.
There's the old Sears and Roebuck homes from the 20s and 30s that still stand in some place in the country.
Oh,
They showed up and
absolutely.
you put them together.
They're beautiful too.
They're
They're
awesome homes. They
beautiful.
always had cool front porches on them.
Oh, they're so nice.
Yeah.
What question, what would you recommend for someone in their early 20s looking to buy a home for the first time? Do you think flipping a, rundown house would work? What do you
If you
think?
can put a ton of your own sweat equity in it, if you are just a very handy person and can put a lot of your own sweat equity into it, I think that's a beautiful way to do your first home. I would also say if you're in your 20s, time is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Meaning getting into home ownership game in a house that makes sense or in a condo or something like that you can hang on to is going to set you ahead of a lot of your peers because most of them won't be buying until their mid 30s, early 40s in some cases. And
Correct.
you're going to be in an amazing position to realize that equity, take it, flip it to the next house, the next house. My advice would be buy anything that makes sense for you, that you feel comfortable in, that you think you can make a profit on in the future. And if you do that in your early 20s, you're setting yourself up for success in a way most people don't even really consider, honestly.
In the when I was buying my first house, the average age of people buying their first home was 24.
Yeah,
That age right now is 32.
I believe it.
32. And
Yeah,
it's not because they can't it's because, the world the way it works now.
yes.
They have education costs, medical costs, things that we never had, we didn't have when we were growing up. And it continues to get older and older every single year. So
Yep.
all right, everybody. We're going to be wrapping this up. It's 1 minute, 17 seconds. Thank you, Matt Kelderman. I hope you have a fantastic Christmas. I want to
You
say thank
too.
you to everybody in the chat and all our moderators. Thank you, Lawnmower, Debbie Brady, and Diamond Rush Media. You guys are here every single week, always making sure the chat is cleaned up, and I appreciate you. I want to say thank you to the super chatters today because you help. All those little dollars add up, and that helps me keep going with this channel, and I appreciate it very much. All these things, the cameras, the microphones. Hopefully, Santa's going to bring me a new microphone for Christmas. And I want to say thank you to Matt and thank you for being here. And next week we are pre-recording the show. Make sure that you follow the link that I have for the Google form that you can fill out, and Eddie is going to be reading those questions to me, and I will be answering them. I will be dressed up. Eddie might be showing up as the Grinch.
So that would be so amazing.
Matt is on YouTube. Thank you so much, Lawnmower. Matt is on the YouTube. If you need to get a hold of Matt, you can go visit him right here. All of his information is right there. He's also on a podcast called, which one is yours?
The only real estate podcast worth listening to.
Yeah, the longest podcast name in the world is what it's called.
It is. It's way too long.
It's way too long. But it mostly gears to real estate agents. But sometimes
it is. It's very geared towards real estate agents. But if you want to hear what people are talking about behind the scenes, go ahead and tune in because it's publicly put out there. I don't know why. We're maniacs.
Oh yeah, you guys really want something entertaining. You should see how the realtors are going to be touring the United States to rebrand, because they don't think the public understands what a realtor really does and what the difference is. Like the public gives two flying toots.
There's our real estate dudes hard at work.
Yeah, let's go get on the bus and travel around the United States to make sure the public knows what we do.
I promise.
So glad that those dues go pay for that garbage.
Yeah,
anyways.
Exactly. Go lobby somebody, please.
Yeah, go lobby somebody up. So thank you, Matt. We'll see you on the live streams that will be pre-recorded. Just know that. Fill out the form. It's a Google Doc. I think Diamond Rush Media put it in there, and I also pin it as a comment. I'm going to be dressing up for Christmas. I'm going to have a Christmas dress on. I'm going to have a Christmas hat on.
One here.